this morning was very, very busy in committee. The first thing I want to get to was actually what happened yesterday. And guys, I sent you this clip. I don't know if we added it in here. This is the Representative Tony Wisniewski yesterday. Do I got a thumbs up from you guys? Yeah, here he is. So I'll just set this up. Tony Wisniewski was the sponsor of a bill, the State Compact Bill. And this basically says, and he explained it, he had a very long presentation here, but he explained that this bill would authorize Idaho to form a compact with other states, particularly Texas, to protect our country against invasion. And so this is a part of his speech here that I wanted to get into, where he talks about are we under an invasion? Is what is happening to our country now considered an invasion? So let's play this clip here. Representative Wisniewski yesterday on the House floor debating House. It says 564, but it actually is 464. And I believe they updated in the clip, but don't get confused. It's House Bill 464. So let's play this clip.
Well, I don't think there's any or many of us that would believe that we have not been invaded. I'd like to read several issues here. The definition of invasion involves two parts. First of all, it's entry. And if you have entry only into a foreign space or a space that you don't belong in, that is mere trespassing. The other requirement is a term called enmity, or intent to do harm. And we certainly have that with the millions of illegal aliens that have invaded our country. The conservative estimates are that there are between 11 and 17 million illegal aliens here in this country. We are being engaged with asymmetric warfare. They're not fighting with rifles or bullets, but we are seeing a lot of damage done to our social structures, hospitals, schools, housing, education, U.S. jobs that are being lost, welfare programs that are being overrun. The bill also includes reference to the Canadian border, and some people have thought, well, we only share a couple dozen miles of Canadian border with the state of Idaho, but that's not the issue. The issue is only about 78% of the illegal aliens are coming across the southern border. The rest are coming in through the coasts, which is difficult to do, or from along the northern border that we share, the United States shares with Canada. So the Canadian border, if you exclude the Alaska-Canadian border, which is not subject to this or not of great deal of interest in this issue, that national border is about 4,000 miles long. The southern border is only 2,000, so we have a stretch of 2,000 extra miles that is available to illegals to come across from the Canadian side. And we have reports that illegal aliens and drugs are coming across that border as well. So we're interested in the entire northern border, not just the Idaho-Canadian border. I'd like to just reference a couple of headlines from major news sources or newspapers. Here's one that's talking about the growing number of Chinese immigrants crossing the southern border. This is written in 2023, and it said that more than 24,000 Chinese citizens have been apprehended crossing the southern border, and that was in 2023. How many gotaways were among that group? They usually fly into Ecuador, which is the source of the trail of these migrations, because Ecuador does not require a visa to enter. And so there's an organized trail from Ecuador up into Colombia, across to Panama.
Okay, so we thank Representative Tony Wisniewski for presenting this bill. He, as I mentioned, he spoke at length on presenting this bill, and it passed. It passed 48-20. And so that was a good thing. You can see that this issue is of extreme importance. It has obviously national attention, and everything that the states are involved in that aren't along the southern border, they have great concern because we're seeing the effects of this, and you'll see today, because there's kind of a theme going on here, that what is happening at the border certainly does affect what is happening here in Idaho. And as Representative Wisniewski told us there, we share a northern border, which is just as easily accessed, if need be, by an invading force. One point of note that I highly recommend is there was an episode of Tucker Carlson recently that he released where he interviewed, I believe it was Brett Weinstein, who went down to the Darien Gap in Panama, which separates South America from Central America, and it's a very thick jungle. And this is there's accumulated a ton of people here, and that's the pathway. They come in through Ecuador, like he said, and they make their way through Central America. And so there's a very, very scary things going on, and there's a great migration that's happening in the world as a whole. And there are tons and tons of migrants that are moving about and coming to this country for very personal reasons. But there's also bad actors that are taking advantage of this migration, and this hopefully sets the stage to help defend our country. So we will keep an eye on that bill. So in the vein of that, let's move forward here because Representative Dale Hawkins, we had him on a couple of weeks ago talking about House Joint Memorial 8. And this is a memorial that would be sent to the our congressional delegation, Senators Reich, Senators Crapo, Representative Fulcher, and Representative Simpson in Washington, D.C., instructing them, basically, and telling them that the legislature of Idaho is requesting, demanding, whatever language you want to say, that they do something about the border. And this is what, and saying with one voice, this is what Idaho is looking for. A Senate memorial was passed recently in the Senate that tried to deal with this, but critics of that bill look at that and think that was more of a protection for a guest worker program than it was a forceful statement for border security. This one is the opposite of that in terms of saying we need to lay the blame here at President Biden and the lack of actions that Congress is taking, and so Representative Hawkins was before the committee this morning. I believe this was in the House State Affairs Committee. He presented this memorial, and then he also got a question from our favorite Democrat on that committee, Representative Gannon. So we have that clip ready to go here. So let's bring that up and listen to Representative Hawkins speak on this issue.
Before you, we have House Joint Memorial 8. And let me get a little organized here for you.
Well, you take your time.
You bet. There is no doubt that if you turn on the TV today and you watch news all over our country, the main topic of news is the invasion at our southern border. I flipped through the channels the other day looking to see if I could find news that wasn't somehow reporting on this issue, all the way from the young nurse that was just murdered across the country and other events like that. But just in general, the invasion that we're going, and I've had people ask me, do we think this is the time for this? What's the need for this? House Joint Memorial 8 was drafted to send the strongest possible message to Congress, and specifically Idaho's congressional delegation. The overreaching message, the immigration invasion at the southern border is not an accident. It is the result of the deliberate actions by President Joe Biden and his administration. Joe Biden broke the immigration system and did not do it by accident. And I have a list of things here I'd like to read to you. I could
You're
use.
welcome to read them. Let's refer to him as the president, whether we,
Yes, sir.
the respect for the
Chairman.
office, I think, is important.
Yes, I agree.
Okay,
I agree.
thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Are we not supposed to be impugning motives here?
I haven't heard anything yet, and I've tried to make sure that he's professional in referring to him as the President of the United States, whether he agrees with them or not. So if it goes down that, feel free to object, and we'll take that up.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oh boy, the guard, the proletariat guard, has to come out and protect Joe Biden. Unbelievable, unbelievable. Okay, that aside, Achilles' concerns aside, very serious goings on. We all know how serious this is. We all know exactly what the country and the immigration process was just 3 years ago. Even before COVID and all that stuff was going on, the Remain in Mexico policy and all of that stuff that was going on just a mere 4 years ago. But so this memorial is extremely important, and I believe during, and it was a lengthy hearing this morning, and we could be playing clips for days. We might clip the entire thing and just share it again like we've done before with others. But we do have a couple of good clips here, because we had some good questions from Representative Heather Scott, who was questioning some of the lobbyists who are there on behalf of corporations. They were there on behalf of the dairy industry. They were there on behalf on this one that we're going to see was on behalf of the Food Processors Association, something like that. And so she wanted to find out exactly who the food processors represented, and then some other stats about their companies and that sort of thing. So we'll cut to those clips fairly quickly here. But I just want to set up for you that the reason why there's so much pushback from these lobbyists and these associations, these business associations, is because of the labor. It's the labor issue. There is a lot of folks coming over the border who are being hired illegally right now in Idaho. They are working here illegally, and that's an issue. And so there's a lot of force coming out against this memorial, and against any other laws that are trying to be passed to deal with this issue. So let's go to Representative Heather Scott. She was talking with the let's see which one we have. Let's do the companies one first, guys. Let's do that.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Kelly. So we learned from the gentleman from the dairy farmers that they had about 70% of their workforce is illegal, undocumented, whatever you want to call them, but illegal. Can you tell me what percent of food producers' workforce is illegal or undocumented?
Mr. Kelly.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Scott, no, I definitely cannot. The wide berth that we represent, once again, back to your question, there's corporations involved, there's small seed associations involved, Idaho Dairymen's involved, and so different industries, different farmland, whether you're a dryland farmer, whether you're a lettuce farmer, necessitates how many workers you need
to testify
and
for.
That's where that would come from. That number would have to come from, and I'd have to get in the weeds on that. I don't have any number for that.
One last follow-up, thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Kelly, can you tell me, is a couple of your larger corporations, I think like Monsanto might be one of yours, but can you just give me a couple of the larger corporations that food producers represents?
Mr. Kelly.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Scott, yeah. Formerly Monsanto would be Bayer, and we have J.R. Simplot is another one that comes to the top of my mind.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
Okay, so interesting there. The Dairy Association alone had 70,000. Was that what they said? 70,000 illegal employees in the dairy industry. That number blew my mind. Not 70,000, 70%. Okay, thanks for the correction, guys. 70% of the workers in the dairy industry are are of that illegal status, which is mind blowing. I mean, whatever number you want to use, it's mind blowing that's the number. And then of course you heard some of the companies that the food processors are representing. So. Representative Scott had some other questions about the incentives for behind all of this, and so let's listen to that clip.
My question is, does your industry do anything to incentivize the illegals, workers, to become legal citizens? What does your industry do? Because it sounds like you pay them fairly, you give them housing, you give them travel. Do you incentivize them to go through the pathway to citizenship?
Okay.
Mr. Jensen.
Mr. Chairman and Representative Scott, thank you. Very good question. So I just want to differentiate. First of all, when it comes to H-2A employers and everything like that, those individuals are guest workers. We shouldn't conflate them with immigrants. They're not looking to come and become, citizens or their legal status here is on a worker visa program that's for the duration up to 10 months. So we're not trying to do anything on that front to get them there. On the other front, the challenge is as it has been discussed, is that as these employees present the documentation to complete an I-9 form, our employers are kind of stuck in between a rock and a hard place. They cannot question the legitimacy of that document without the risk of litigation for questioning their documents, and it puts them in legal peril. We have examples of employers that have questioned those kind of documents in the past and have been sued for profiling, and so it's one of those tenuous, difficult situations where they have a job that needs to be done, crops in the field that need to come out, seeds that need to be planted, cows that need to be milked, and they have somebody who's here in the country presenting the documents and willing to do the job, and that's kind of the situation where our folks are in. It's certainly difficult when the burden of federal government immigration law falls on the shoulders of our farmers and ranchers in this state. We don't think it's fair at all because the federal government is not doing their job. That burden falls on the individual farmers and ranchers who are just trying to make a living and carry out their needs here. And so we're as frustrated as anybody, but at the same time, we don't want to be in the legal jeopardy of questioning or criticized for stereotyping or profiling an individual as well.
Representative Young.
Oh wow, incredible! This is the battle that they're up against when they talk about workers, and he didn't want to say it, but people that come into this country to do the jobs that Americans won't do or that Idahoans won't do, and this goes to the notion of why she asked the incentives, the things that are outlaid there, the things that even our government will put forth, like workforce housing, and all these incentives that help industry hire labor who will work for cheap so that they can have and you can have these cheap goods. But is that moral? Is that ethical? I mean, that's basically what the South was doing during pre-antebellum times, right? Making money off of slave labor. That's not where I want to be headed. That's not the world I want to live in. And so there are plenty of folks out there. There are plenty of youth out there, low skilled or unskilled workers, which is not a slight against anybody. When you don't have a particular set of skills, then you're an unskilled person. And there's a lot of these jobs where you learn on the job and stuff and so forth. So I look at this whole notion of needing to have all of these folks coming in, because they're going to go do jobs that Americans won't do, and it was like I said, this was a very long hearing. There was a lot of great arguments being made, but we've got an unemployment rate. We also have people that are looking for work and looking for jobs. We have high inflation, so all these factors come in here. But it seems that these folks that are coming in are trying to defend the fact that we need to be giving these jobs to people that are coming over the border illegally, or they're applying for a work visa, and so I think if you can reduce the problems that are happening at the border and reduce that to a level that's sustainable pre-Biden era that then we will be able to tackle the work visa problem and having people still come over here on work visas. But what's going on now is unsustainable, and we've seen a lot of arguments in that realm. Jordan Redman, speaking of, was in the House Health and Welfare Committee with House Bill 615. And this essentially said that while everybody, we want to make sure that if there is an emergency, whether you're an illegal alien or not, if there is an extreme emergency health-wise, that you will get cared for. We all have that compassion. And so this bill essentially said if you are here illegally and you don't have an emergency or a non-essential healthcare requirement, that we're not going to cover those expenses. And there are other nonprofits and there are other agencies out there that might be able to help you in that situation. But when it comes to this overwhelming force of folks coming into the country and putting a strain on these services, this bill is just one way to sort of tackle and put a restraint on those services. So Representative Redman presented that bill this morning in the House Health and Welfare Committee. So let's listen to his brief comments on presenting this bill.
Representative Redman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. Jordan Redman, District 3 in Kootenai County for the record. House Bill 615 addresses what I believe is the biggest issue we're currently facing in the country today, and that's what's happening at our southern border. Somewhere around 8 million people have crossed the southern border illegally, and our federal government under the current administration has been facilitating this. Many in this body have asked, what can we do as a state, particularly like Idaho, to stop what's happening at the southern border or to try to help? The answer is Idaho can become less attractive to illegal immigration. This bill would remove access to some public benefits by illegal immigration. In this way, we can make Idaho less attractive to the people that are here illegally. This bill does not prohibit anyone who's here illegally from accessing emergency medical care, and it does not prevent the state actions for necessary for protecting life and public safety. This bill does not go after any businesses, but it does prohibit the government from providing non-emergency services to folks that are here illegally. That's why this is good policy, because it does not target the employer, it targets those who are here illegally. In my opinion, we should not be using taxpayer dollars to service folks that should not be here in the first place. We need to use those resources for the citizens that are here legally and who need some help from the state. The message will get out that Idaho is not a place that is easily accepted of services if you're here illegally.
Jordan Redman's bill ended up failing, and it didn't make it out of committee. And the folks that voted against it were Chanel Dixon, Josh Wheeler, Megan Blanksma, and Marco Erickson, and the Democrats. And so it was close. I think that made it a 7-5 vote at the end there. And it's bizarre to me that the folks who are so concerned, they have such concern about folks that are not citizens or in this country legally. You know, if you're participating in the process and you're advancing your community by contributing, by paying your taxes, by paying into the system, and then seeing all of those resources being used by an overwhelming force of people coming in here illegally, it boggles the mind, you know. But it's the same mentality that says we need to send all of our federal dollars overseas to other places while we've got problems here. So it's a big issue. It happens from the state level to the federal level, all the way down to the local level. And so it's very upsetting to see that this bill didn't make its way through because some people wanted to team up with the Democrats and defeat this. So the bill dies in committee. Maybe it'll come back in another form later. Maybe we have to wait till next session.
Spending this money surplus, which is not a surplus, it's an overcharging of the taxpayer.